Welcome to day 3, lesson 4 of Here's the Scoop. My name is Jocelyn Crawford, the 4-H agent for Kanawha County WVU Extension Service. Today we're going to give you a brief overview on what you will be doing during day 3. Our objective for today is that students will practice the engineering design process to test materials for a trash collector. And this is the day that you will need water. So it's important to make sure you have a pitcher or a container full of water ready to go at the beginning of the lesson. So for day 3, this would be a good day to have the kids maybe move outside to do this kind of activity. Any of these days that we are going to use water gets the kids outside and in a different kind of environment. It also reduces the amount of cleanup that you have to do. And kids are really excited and engaged more if their learning environment is just a little bit different, especially when you're bringing something different as well. The materials you will need for day 3 are your Danny the Duck card and the engineering design poster. You will need a pitcher or some sort of container with water. The student workstations all set up with 2 aluminum trays, and you want to fill up one of those trays with about 1 inch of water. You'll need a small towel, the trash collector handles, 4 pieces of aluminum foil, cheesecloth, construction paper, craft foam, your screen, like your mesh screen, and your transparency plastic. So the amount of pieces of materials that you'll need will just depend on how many kids you have sharing each aluminum tray, but you want to make sure you have ample amount of each one of those things in case kids get materials wet early, or so that way they don't have to share everything. They can all be working at the same time. So here are instructions for day 3, lesson 4. Step 1, we're going to read chapter 4 out of our Taking Out the Trash storybook. Step 2, we're going to check for understanding from what we did during our previous lesson. So we're going to ask the students, do you think the paper would be a good choice for making a trash collector to clean trash out of a pond? And why or why not? And ask them to think back on what happened to the paper in the book, and their experiences of what happens when paper gets wet. And then we're going to ask the students also, do you think the plastic would be a good choice? Why or why not? So step 3, we're going to show students the materials they'll be using to create their trash collectors. We're going to try to answer the question, how can we figure out if this materials will work well even when they get wet? Step 4, we're going to model how to test a material. So clip one of the materials onto the trash collector handle, dip it into the water, and think aloud as you observe what happens, and then place the wet material into the aluminum tray. So for step 5, we're going to assign students to workstations and have them test materials. There are several different ways to do that. So you can have each student have their own trash collector device on their own, and they're going to be testing those different materials. You can put them in pairs. If you have a really large group, you can even put them into like a group of 4. Also, if you have a ton of kids and you are trying to conserve the amount of materials that you're using today during the test phase, don't be afraid to cut down those materials into smaller squares. So that way the kids can still get the experience of testing those materials, but you're not using up all of your cheesecloth and your plastic and your mesh that sometimes is a little bit hard to come by. For step 6, our guided questions we are going to have our students discuss are, what do you notice about the materials as you test them? Now that these materials are wet, is anything about the material changing? And do you think this material would work well to remove trash out of the water? Step 7, have students sort their materials into a works well in water pile and a doesn't work well in water pile. Step 8, graph the materials the students sorted into the works well piles by organizing them on the floor to create a bar graph. Step 9, have students turn and talk with a partner. Ask, what did you notice about the materials that we think work well in the water? And why do you think these materials work well in water? This is also a conversation that you can have with students in a small group if you don't have a lot of students in your class. Step 10, We'll create a graphic organizer to hang showing the materials that students agreed worked well in water. To prepare students for the next day's lesson, you can tell them tomorrow we will plan and sketch our trash collectors. We hope you have fun on day 3 of Here's the Scoop. The kids are usually very excited to be able to play in the water and get their hands wet and test all of those different materials. So we hope you guys have a really good time today and are looking forward to what happens on day 4.